Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Ndiho in Washington. We are coming to you live with a breaking news story. History rarely ends with a complete period. It usually fades into unanswered questions, but on February 3rd, 2026, in a quiet home in Zintan, Libya, one chapter appears to have closed. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is dead. Libyan sources said that master gunmen, cut power into his security system and killed him in a brief targeted attack. Wow, what does that mean for Libya? Libya has been at crossroads ever since the father was eliminated, Gaddafi was eliminated. We've seen so much happening in Libya. Right now, this is breaking news. We are going to try to unpack this story as we get more information live on air. So this morning I woke up and the headline coming out of Africa was Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, was killed. We don't know what the circumstances that led to his killing, but what we know for sure is that the prosecutors in Libya have launched a criminal investigation into the killing of Saif al-Islam, Gaddafi's last remaining son. Now, for context, for those who maybe haven't been following what's going on in Libya, he was the last surviving son of Muammar Gaddafi, with a serious claim to national power and the final living symbol of a political dynasty that ruled Libya for more than 4 decades. Tonight, on Different Perspectives, we are not just going to report about the death, we will examine what this moment means through maybe 3 lenses, if you will. The failed, I'll start off with as a failed reformer, of course, or the strong man prophet and the geopolitical reset. Okay, let's dive into at least, let's begin with 2. Saif al-Islam was and who he was and how he came to be who he was. A bit of background here. He was the son of the state fallen leader, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Saif al-Islam was not just a politician. He was raised in power. His father seized the power and control of Libya in 1969 and built a state centered on his own authority and the oil wealth. He paid school fees, he built hospitals, he built roads. I mean, Libya before the war was the place every African leader wanted to replicate, was a place that was talked about in history lessons, in political science classes, as a country that was on the cutting edge of development in Africa. Libya was by far not a third world country. It had all sorts of resources that Gaddafi had put to use. To some extent, he even built a river that was flowing from the coast through parts of the desert, creating livelihoods that these people in the desert did not think about. But for political life, but his political life rather revolved around royalty to the leader and his inner circle. By the later 1990s and early 2000s, Saif al-Islam emerged as a possible phase of transition. He was Western educated. He spoke many languages, including English, French, and Arabic. He cultivated contacts in Europe and in the United States. He helped broker Libya's decision in 2003 to abandon the weapons of mass destruction. I don't know if you guys remember that, but Libya, one of the reasons why the West feared Libya, they thought that Libya had weapons of mass destruction. And yes, Gaddafi had a lot of money. He was in a position to come up with stuff like that. So in 2003, his son, Saif al-Islam, who just got killed, came up with this idea. He wanted to reset the economy, he wanted to reset the country, and he came up with this program. He approached the Western nations, hey, we are willing to put down our weapons of mass destruction, our nuclear programs. They invited in inspectors to come and see what was happening in Libya, and a move that really put Libya back on the world map. It reopened diplomatic relations with the West and ended years of sanctions. Of course, to outsiders, he looked like a bridge between dictatorship and reform, between isolation and reintegration, between the old system and a new Libya. But inside Libya, the system remained built around his father. Now, fast forward in 2011, everything broke. Lens one, this is what I'm gonna maybe try to unpack in three different segments. The failed reformer marched to the West. Saif al-Islam was once seen as Libya's future. He spoke as one of those people who was quote unquote seen by the West as a guy who could bring about change in Libya. He was welcomed here with open arms. I remember going to the State Department where he was meeting with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We covered that press conference. At the time, I was still at the Voice of America. I mean, he embodied the idea of that Libya could evolve without a revolution. Then came the Arab Spring. When protests erupted in 2011, Saif al-Islam faced a defining choice, whether to reform the system, the old system that he knew, led by his father, or defend it. So he chose to defend it. In a televised address, I remember us covering that, he warned that Libya would descend into rivers of blood. Rivers of blood. At some point, even called the Libyans cockroaches. He said they were going to come for them. If the uprising continued, he said in the speech, that his reformist image, in fact, that's what actually changed his reformist image back then. So what I want us to talk about is what really happened during those protests in Libya. I want us to turn our attention to the sources that say masked men cut power to his security and killed him in a brief targeted attack. He was, for those of you who don't know, Saif al-Islam was Gaddafi's, trusted son. Some people called him the heir apparent. And to some other people, he was one of those people seen as a reformer, as somebody who had this Western education, who wanted to bring about change in Libya. But all that ended because once the protests broke up, there was this heavy-handedness. A lot of people were killed. His father was out trying to, to lynch his citizens. So was the son doing the lead. He was the commander-in-chief, leading the troops in attacking civilians. For context, there are certain things that happened then that we don't talk about. But the family had ruled Libya for more than 4 decades. To be exact, they had been in power for 42 years. What started out as maybe a coup, a bloodless coup, when his father overthrew King Idris. Libya at one point was a monarch, and his father was done. He was a colonel in the army. He led a group of young soldiers, disgruntled soldiers, and they overthrow King Idris. Then the father ruled from 1969 to his death in 2011. Now, his life became a tragic end in itself. He understood that the modern world, but he could not escape the system his father had built for him. He knew how to speak to Western audiences, but he chose royalty over transformation. From this perspective, his killing in just yesterday is not sudden. It is the delayed consequence of a political road that he abandoned 15 years ago. In this version of history, Saif al-Islam did not just die yesterday. His political future died in 2011. The strongman prophet, like he was called back then, now shifted his perspective away from the capital into Libya's tribal heartland. To many of his supporters, Saif al-Islam was not just a criminal, he was also wanted by the International Criminal Court. He was a warning voice that if they return to the same speech in 2011, this was not as true as a threat, but as a prophecy. Civil war, fragmentation, foreign interference, militia rule, for them, that last 15 years provided him right, proved him right. They remembered a Libya under his father when the borders were controlled, electricity was reliable, the state had one center of power. They saw Saif al-Islam as the only figure who could reunite tribes across regions because he carried out the Gaddafi name. And that memory, the memory of a centralized state, still rings supreme in Libya. Because let's face it, ever since the fall of that regime, Libya has been divided. You have a government in Tripoli, you have another government in Benghazi, and you have all other factions fighting for the control of Libya. Now, for context, it's been this has been a long time coming. Saif al-Islam wanted to vie for president. He was bad because, quote unquote, he was a criminal. He was also a wanted guy, and he underwent trial and all that in Libya. But the International Criminal Court wanted a piece of him as well for the crimes he and his father committed during that uprising where so many Libyans were killed. In this lens, for Libya's rival authorities, Saif al-Islam was dangerous because he was unpredictable. He carried the Gaddafi name, and had tribal backing. And he was wanted, of course, by the International Criminal Court, as I said earlier. Now, from a Western perspective, Western authorities said that he was a legal and diplomatic problem for them. For Eastern power brokers, he competed for the same nationalist vote base, just like his father, you know. Now, from talking to some people, some analysts, foreign actors, they say that he was leveraging what maybe a lot of people would characterize as a political chessboard. I'll repeat that. When they looked at Saif al-Islam in Libya, being in that realm of Libya, people said he was playing a political chess game. And he had become sort of like a favorite. He was likely to become a major player in the near future. If you look at it even more closely, he had lines of influence. He had money, probably from the loot that him and his father had from the day. He had lined up all these political leaders, tribal leaders, who could help him get to where he was going. And of course, to the opposing sides, you have these rival factions that have been fighting. They saw him as a threat, even though they tried to stop him from vying for political office. Chances are that he was seen as the alternative to the father, because these warring factions have failed to unite the country or to continue what the legacy Gaddafi had put in place for Libya. Today, Libya is in tatters because of this fragmentation. They cannot seem to unite. Every faction is fighting for the restoration of democracy, oil shipping rights, and all that kind of stuff. So there's always been a tension. Now, fast forward today, some people ask whether this was strategic or for him to come back into the mix, or is it about the past, or was it about shaping Libya's political future? Well, again, people have argued that what his death means, it means that Saif al-Islam removes the last living symbol of the Gaddafi political project. There is no longer a son who can claim continuity with the old state. For supporters of the former system, the door is now closed. For Libya's current power blockers, especially those rival factions, the wildcard is gone. But does this resolve Libya's core problems? The country remains divided as I speak to you. Armed groups still dominate politics. Foreign powers still compete for influence. Elections remain stalled. The collapse of the Gaddafi system in 2011 did not produce a new stable government. It produced a vacuum. And Saif al-Islam saw that and tried to step back into that vacuum using the weight of history. Now history has removed him from that board, the chessboard that I talked about. The father's shadow is impossible to understand. Saif al-Islam, without understanding his father. Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya for 42 years. He was centralized, he centralized power. He controlled wealth. He eliminated rivals. His system did not allow institutions to grow independently of him. When the system collapsed, nothing strong enough to replace it remained in place. Saif al-Islam inherited that memory of the system, but not his machinery. He inherited the name, but not the state. He tried to live between two worlds, the past of authoritarian stability and the promise for reform. And of course, history has crushed him in the middle. And the truth is that at once, which lens is actually true? Was he the reformer who failed? Was he the prophet who collapsed? Or was he the obstacle that just got killed? I'm going to try to answer all that in this live stream and see what if I can get it right. But if I make any mistakes, I'm not a Libya expert. I'm just a reporter who has reported on this country for a very long time. I know bits and I know some nuances, some bits and bits of the story. So using that knowledge, I'm going to relay what I know to you guys. I really think that so many things have been happening behind the scenes. At the same time, you have all sorts of power breakers also playing what I could characterize as fighting for Libya. Everybody wants a piece of Libya. Now, given that Saif al-Islam lived in a shadow of his father, who ruled for more than 4 decades, trying to understand or trying to go between those dictatorships and reform, between tribal and state, and the past is very, very hard. Libya wakes up today without its most famous political son or ghost. But in the instability, he warned is still here. The question is now, who is Saif al-Islam? Who was he as a person? Or what comes after he's gone? Now, again, this is a developing story. We'll give you context. We'll try to examine what is happening in Libya as we speak, the international response, and what this means for Libya as political future. We'll keep you posted because this is a breaking news story. But again, to reiterate what we talked about earlier, I think so many things are going to happen now that Saif al-Islam is out of the picture. Anything is likely to happen. Like I said earlier, history rarely ends with a complete period. It usually fades into unanswered questions. But I just yesterday, February 3rd, in a quiet home in Zintan, Libya, one of those chapters appears to have closed for good. Gaddafi's name is gone. Now, for anybody watching this, I'm just ranting, I'm just all over the place. But just for perspective, there are a lot of African leaders who have held on to power for a very, very long time. What Libya, the example of Libya teaches us is that no matter how well-intentioned you are, no matter how good you are, no matter how many things you do for your people, there comes an end or there comes a time when all the things that you did don't matter, don't mean a thing. Libya, by any measure or standard, was arguably one of Africa's success stories before the war in 2011. Today, Libya is in tatters. Libya has digressed to a third world country because people have been fighting and killing each other. Since the death and the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya has never been the same. There's been a lot happening in that country, and I kid you not, what we are witnessing is just the beginning of maybe another prolonged chaos. But also, there could be a ray of hope that now that Saif al-Islam is out of the picture, we could see Libya recover, get back to where it's supposed to, because they have the resources, they have the oil, they have natural gas, they have all sorts of things that, any nation that wants to go places, that wants to use those resources, could take Libya to another place, just like Gaddafi had done. I think any leader coming in could use those resources to take Libya to another level. But again, this is something that we don't know what is going to happen now that Saif al-Islam is out of the picture. Let me just also give some kind of context. A little bit of background. Saif al-Islam, the son of Muammar Gaddafi, was not just a politician. He was raised in power. His father seized control of Libya in 1969 when he killed the then King Idris. He built a state centered on his own authority. The oil wealth paid for schools, the hospitals, and infrastructure in Libya was world class. No question about it before the war. He even built a man-made river that cost over $20 billion, getting water from the coast, cutting through Libya. That project was, quote unquote, considered one of the world's man-made wonders. But all that has been destroyed, all that infrastructure that we talked about. I remember before the war, people used to go to Libya for medical tourism. People used to go to Libya for all sorts of things, for tourism and other things, because Libya was seen as a country that had used its resources very, very well. I remember Gaddafi was also fronting the idea of Africa uniting and becoming one country instead of 54 or 55 countries, if you include Western Sahara, into the mix. But of course, that did not materialize. As we all remember, history was not kinder to Gaddafi. He did not see through some of this stuff. But by the later 1990s and in early 2000, Saif al-Islam emerged as a possible face of a transition. He was Western educated. He spoke Arabic, English, French, and many other languages. He cultivated contacts in Europe and America. I remember him coming here to meet the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton, and I attended that press conference, covered him very, very well. We tried to get an interview with him, but he declined. But at that point, Libya was seen from at least the Western perspective as a country that was trying to get back from those, from supporting quote-unquote terrorism to becoming a country that people revered, people liked. And all that fell apart because once those protests started, the ones that started in Tunisia, what became to be called as the Arab Spring, it took out the leader there, Ben Ali, fled, went to Egypt. Hosni Mubarak, who had also been in power for a very long time, was taken out by the protesters. It came down to Libya. Libya initially resisted. They fought hard until NATO stepped in. And one of the things, what I remember President Barack Obama talking about was that one of the things that he regretted I think he even wrote it in his book, was the killing of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. He said that was one of the lowest points of his presidency. Why? Because once they eliminated Gaddafi, Libya just disintegrated into chaos. Today, Libya is divided along tribal and different militia groups. You have a government in Tripoli, you have a government in Benghazi, you have other factions who control different regions. So Libya has never really recovered from the overthrow and the unfortunate killing of Muammar Gaddafi. But before all that happened, I think Libya made a move to reopen diplomatic relations with the West that ended years of sanctions. I remember then British Prime Minister Tony Blair visiting Libya. He visited Libya. So was the former Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi, who also died. Condoleezza Rice, at the peak of the Bush presidency, also went to Libya. And so many other things happened, Libya was seen by most as a country that was doing very, very well compared to other people. Now, fast forward, this whole thing has kind of changed, but it is what it is. Sometimes it's good to look back and say maybe it was a good thing for the people to stand up to Gaddafi, get him out of power. Maybe it was a good thing for NATO to get involved. But did that solve the problem? I don't think that did, because to outsiders, he looked like, when you talk about Islam, Saif al-Islam, to outsiders, he looked like a bridge between dictatorship and reform, between isolation and reintegration, between the old system and the new Libya. But inside Libya, the system remained built around his father. And in 2021, everything, like I said earlier, broke down. So if I'm looking at it from that lens, the failed reform to match to the Western style, Saif al-Islam was the face of that. Once that failed, he resorted to what he knew best. He decided to defend what his father had built, which was ironic because initially he spoke of a modern civil society in Libya, opening up the space for people to express their views, for people to go about their business, for a free press, for a reformed government that was a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Unlike what his father had done for 40 plus years, where it was a government for him, by him, for his people. The people of Libya were not part of, quote unquote, that government. Everything came top, it was a top-down approach. But so this son of his came through, wanted all that changed. He spoke very highly of a modernized Libya. He spoke of gradual political change. For a time, he embodied the idea that Libya could evolve without a revolution. Then, of course, again came the Arab Spring. When those protests erupted in 2011, Saif al-Islam faced a defining choice. whether to reform the system or defend it. So he chose to defend it. I remember watching, I think from some of my archives, you'll see a video where he was wearing like a green shirt, waving to the crowd. I remember him saying one of the things that stood out at that time, he gave this fierce speech. He warned that Libya would descend into rivers of blood. What that meant, I can't tell you, but a lot of people have interpreted that to mean that he said that if people protested against his father's government, they were going to literally kill those people. And that's, quote unquote, the rivers of blood would be blood of Libyans flowing the streets of Tripoli, Benghazi, Sirte, all these other places that, that we talk about in Libya. And I think that speech that he gave ended his reformist image just like that. Because once he gave that speech, then he stopped becoming the quote-unquote, the heir apparent, to rather a person who was so violent. Everybody started running away from him. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant. All these Western countries that had opened up diplomatic whatever missions and inviting him to, they all changed and aggressively started going after the regime. Now, this is, again, we don't know the circumstances that led to his death. The prosecutors in Libya are investigating what led to that. Maybe once they come up with answers, we'll be able to update this story. But as we speak, this is what has happened. From what we know, the gunman, the four masked gunmen, cut power into his security system and killed him in a brief and targeted attack. He was the last surviving son of Muammar Gaddafi, with a serious claim to national power. And of course, the final living symbol of a political dynasty that ruled Libya for more than 4 decades. Again, we are streaming this live on all social media platforms. This is a breaking news story. We update the story as we get more information. But I'm Paul Ndiho, and this is Different Perspectives. It's been fascinating reading about Saif al-Islam's story. His life became a tragedy of lost potential. He understood the modern world, but also could not escape the system that his father had built. He knew how to speak very well. He was a very, very smart guy. Obviously, he had benefited enormously from his fathers. He went to some of the best schools. He attended some of the best elite universities. So he was, one of those kids, a rare gem that, that you find. Not obsessed with power until the later days of his father's presidency. And a lot of people looked up to him as the heir apparent before his father died. But what is fascinating about the rise and fall of the Gaddafi family is that for him, he chose royalty over transformation. I kid you not, if he had chosen maybe to ignore the noise and just focused on trying to bring about changes in Libya, he could still be alive. Maybe the dynasty could still be alive. Because when I've talked to Libyans who live here, or Libyans that have met all over Africa, they talk about what Gaddafi did for them. Yes, he was a benevolent dictator. He denied them like press freedom, all these rights that we here in the West talk about. But for sure, he did some remarkable things for Libya. Libyans had free education, free health care. And when I'm talking about healthcare, I'm not talking about substandard healthcare. I'm talking about first grade or first class healthcare. He had free housing. Most Libyans lived for free. They didn't have to worry about their electricity. They didn't have to worry about paying rent in some cases. If you're a young person, you wanted to get married, guess what? The state paid for you to get married. I mean, this guy built infrastructure. Before the war, Libya was touted as one of the best countries on the continent to visit. Tourism was up in the air. Everything was going well for Libya. But if you look at Libya today, you would not think that once upon a time, Libya was one of those countries in Africa that was richer than some European countries, that was not a third world country. Libya was not a third world country before the war. Libya was considered as an upper middle class country. That's a fact. But again, we are reliving this. We are seeing history happen in real life, and this is what happens. So Saif al-Islam did not die yesterday. His political future died in 2011. The strongman, there used to be this saying where people used to call him the strongman prophet. How he was, shifting positions all the time. When it was politically expedient for him, he would shift up positions. But why am I, talking about this? I'm just trying to show you that no matter how well-intentioned you are, when your time comes, or maybe to quote a famous philosopher, Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo once said that an idea whose time has come, I'll rephrase. Victor Hugo once said that you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. I think they knew so well that at the time, in 2011, they could not stop those protests. Those protests had gone viral. They had gone so wild that there is nothing they could do to stop those protests. But they decided to brutally attack those protesters. They killed a lot of people. And to this day, they paid a heavy price. The father was killed, all his siblings were killed, and just yesterday, the only surviving son of the late leader, Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, was shot, was killed, and that marks a tragic end of a chapter, of a legacy, of a dynasty that ruled Libya for more than 4 decades. Just a reminder that Libya under Gaddafi, all the borders were controlled, electricity was reliable, the state had central power. They saw Saif al-Islam as the only figure who could unite tribes across regions and carried out the Gaddafi name and the memory of a centralized state. From this view, his death is not justice. It's political elimination. Think about it. The people who took out Saif al-Islam Gaddafi did not want him competing with them for political power. Because, like I said, he has all these people behind him. He had all these people behind him who think that Gaddafi could actually be the only person left in that country to control Libya. Of course, they have eliminated him, they have taken him out, so that also changes everything. The other interesting perspective that I want to maybe to touch on is that Saif al-Islam did not just die yesterday. He did not die as a fugitive, because at some point he was running for his life after the fall of the father. He disappeared and then remarried as this rebranded guy. Was tried in the local courts. They did whatever they wanted to do to him. He survived the war. So he came back prepared to vie for office, to get into the mix. But of course, the system stopped him. But that did not stop the idea. Again, going back to the idea whose time has come, he believed that he was the person who could take Libya to the next level because of what has been happening. But as you know, Libya right now, as we speak, is a war zone. Any place you go into Libya is a war zone. You have factions fighting and killing each other. You have ISIS in the ISIS that has come up in some parts of Libya. They're also fighting for power there. So not just the rebel factions, governing factions, but you also have these Islamic State rebels who are, disrupting other parts of Libya. And now the question, I was talking to some earlier, and they asked me, now, does he die as a matter of a system that feared the orders that let me rephrase this. Does Saif al-Islam die as a matter of a system that feared the older orders of his father? Or does he die as somebody who could have set the geopolitical button, reset that country to maybe what a lot of people would have said, a better Libya? Now, I can't answer those questions for you, but that's something that's been weighing on my mind. For Libya's rival authorities, Saif al-Islam was dangerous because he was unpredictable. He carried out Gaddafi's last name. He had tribal backing, and he was also wanted by the International Criminal Court for the crimes him and his father and the regime committed against the people of Libya. From a Western angle, Western perspective, he was a legal and diplomatic problem. For the Eastern power brokers, he competed for the same nationalist vote base, which a lot, if let's say he was allowed to compete in those elections, quote unquote, he would have won fair and square, because people associate stability, associate the good things they had under the father with him. So eliminating him was the only solution to get rid of that, so that when these rival factions are competing for power, they don't have somebody with a Gaddafi name in the picture. Now, to some foreign actors, he was leverage. With him gone, the political chessboard becomes simpler. Fewer players, more precise lines of influence, less uncertainty. From this perspective, the killing is not unemotional. It was strategic, but it was strategic in a sense that getting him out of the picture helps these guys who have been at the loggerheads fighting for the last 15 years maybe to claim part of, of leverage of sovereignty of that country. And that remains to be seen. What does somebody sent me a message and he wants to know, what does his death mean, or does it change anything? For context, really, I don't think Saif al-Islam's death removes the last living, changes anything, because he did not have any power, he did not wield any power, but maybe he had connections. He probably had a ton of money stacked away in some hole somewhere, because if it's in international banks, chances are that he would not access it, but he probably had resources that could help bring about change or get him elected into office. Now that he's no longer there, he's gone, who can claim continuity with the old state? Nobody. For the supporters of the former system, this door is now closed. For Libya's current power blockers, the wildcard is gone. But does this resolve Libya's core problems? Absolutely not. I think Libya remains divided, and there's going to be more chaos in the days ahead. Obviously, even though people do not like him, I can kid you not, there are people who liked what the father did for the country, that they are willing to challenge the status quo. Again, this is a developing story. We'll see what happens in the near future. But for sure, Gaddafi, the last living son of Gaddafi, is gone. He's no more. He's gone. Armed groups still dominate politics. Foreign powers still compete for influence. Elections in Libya still remain stalled. The collapse of Gaddafi in 2011 did not produce a stable state. It produced a vacuum, and Saif al-Islam tried to step back into that vacuum using the weight of history, especially his father's name. Now, history has removed him from that board. The father's shadow is impossible to understand, even though Saif al-Islam, without his father, he would not be in that picture. Muammar Gaddafi was something else. I remember covering an event where he came to Uganda. He literally came to Uganda with a convoy of hundreds of people, soldiers and what. His security detail literally took over the security detail of all the visiting heads of state in Uganda. They were in charge. I mean, that guy exuded power. He was like a quote unquote a US president moving around the world. Gaddafi always traveled with his big planes, with his everything. I remember, right before he got eliminated, he came to the United Nations. He gave this fierce speech. And the one thing that I think did him in was when he got the UN Charter, read through it, threw it on the wall, and the rest he tore it in front of world leaders. That image alone, I think world leaders not like that. They thought, even though they had opened up a door for this guy, he was a wild cat. They could not, control him. So that event in itself probably led to the demise of Muammar Gaddafi. So I was saying earlier that he ruled Libya for 42 years. He had centralized power. He controlled wealth. He eliminated rivals. His system did not allow institutions to grow independently from him. When that system collapsed, nothing strong enough was there to replace it. Saif al-Islam inherited the memory of that system, but not its machinery. He inherited the name of his father, but not the state. He tried to live between two worlds, the past of authoritarian stability and the promise for reform. And of course, history has crushed the Gaddafi name for good. And for any leader who is really watching, for anybody watching this, there is a lesson to be learned from the Libyan example. You have these leaders, quote unquote, in some cases they are good leaders, but they have overstayed their welcome. You have people who like them and people who don't like them. So this could be a great lesson. Gaddafi, all his life, fought for Libya. He uplifted Libya from almost the bottom. He brought it up to a middle-class country. People had free housing, free education, free medical care. There was everything going on well for the Libyans. But again, Libya did not all that did not help. All that did not help. So he ended up being killed in the protests in 2011. Of course, those protests were supported by NATO. And I remember President Barack Obama at the time leading the charge that Gaddafi must go. But he later regretted that and said that it was one of his lowest moments when he ordered the killing of Muammar Gaddafi. And I guess to this day he regrets that. But of course, life has moved on. Many years later, 15 years later, Libya is a failed state as we speak. There's no formal government. There are rival governments there. And so many things have been happening. Now that the last remaining son, Saif al-Islam, is gone, who lived in the shadow of his father, who ruled for more than 4 decades, trying to stand between dictatorship and reform, between tribe and state, and between party, rather the past and the future, is no more. He's dead. Libya woke up to that news. So many people are wondering how this could have happened. I think this is an end of a chapter that has been too long, 42 years in power. They were removed from power in 2011. But of course, like I said, Saif al-Islam never disappeared from the lives and the faces of the Libyan people. He's been around. This probably marks the end of that chapter. We will continue to monitor this developing story. And if we learn of anything new, we'll share it with you. But in the meantime, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to me, Paul Ndiho, on Substack, X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify. And of course, we're also streaming live on TikTok. For now, I'll end it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will keep you posted. Until next time, thank you.